Imagine you are a knight in medieval England. You're about to leave for the Crusades, thousands of miles from home, possibly for years, possibly forever. You own land, you have a family, and you have a very real problem. If you simply left, the Crown could seize your land while you were gone. Your family would be left with nothing, all because of a gap in the law. So what did you do? You handed your land to someone you trusted, a friend, a fellow nobleman, a member of the church, and asked them to manage it, look after your family and hand it back when you returned. If you died on the crusade, that same person would make sure it passed to your heirs. That simple act of handing something precious to someone you trusted for the benefit of someone you loved is where the trust begins. And over the next 800 years, it would evolve from a simple medieval survival tool into one of the most powerful legal instruments in the world. Hi, I'm Jim from ELM Legal Services, and today we're doing something a little different. Instead of diving straight into the practical sides of trusts, we're going to look at where they came from, because understanding the history does something a list of features never can. It shows you why trusts exist, what problems that they were designed to solve, and why, centuries later, they remain one of the most powerful ways to protect your family and your estate. So let's go back to the beginning. The year is 1190. King Richard the Lionheart has called the nobility of England to join the Third Crusade, and every knight preparing to leave faces the same uncomfortable question: what happens to my land when I'm gone? The solution that emerged was elegant in its simplicity. Transfer legal ownership to a trusted person, known as a feoffee, on the understanding that they would manage it for your family until you returned. It was built entirely on trust, which is of course exactly where the name comes from. The problem was that with no law to enforce it, things could and did go wrong. Some feoffies kept the land for themselves. Others died before the knight returned, and the common law courts could not help. As far as they were concerned, whoever held legal title owned the land, full stop. If a feoffee decided to keep everything, there was nothing that could be done. Enter the Court of Chancery, which operated on principles of fairness rather than rigid rules. If someone came to the court and said, "I transferred my land to this man on the understanding he would hold it for my family and he has betrayed that trust," the court would intervene and force the feoffee to honour his obligations. For the first time, the arrangement had legal backing. And that principle, that the person who holds legal title can be compelled to act in the interest of another, is still the foundation of trust law today. By the 14th and 15th centuries, these arrangements have become widespread. They were known as uses, and they were being used by landowners across England, not just in wartime, but to protect assets, pass wealth to their families, and avoid certain feudal taxes. That last point did not go unnoticed. Henry VIII was losing significant revenue, and he was not known for taking financial losses quietly. In 1535, he pushed through the Statute of Uses, attempting to abolish the arrangement altogether and collapse legal and beneficial ownership back into one. He got what he wanted, at least for a while. Because lawyers then, as now, are resourceful people, over the following decades, a workaround emerged: the use upon a use, which became what we now simply call a trust. By the 17th century, trusts were flourishing again, more robust and more flexible than before. This is also when we start to see trusts being used in ways that feel surprisingly familiar today. Meet Thomas, a wealthy London merchant in 1680. He has a daughter, and under the law at the time, everything she owned would legally belong to her husband the moment she married. Thomas finds this unacceptable, so he sets up a trust. Legal ownership of her inheritance sits with a trustee, but the income goes directly to his daughter for her own use, regardless of whatever her husband might claim. It is a genuinely radical act for its time, and it works. The 19th century brought comprehensive legal reform. The Trustees Acts of 1850 and 1893, later consolidated inside the landmark Trustee Act of 1925, created clear and enforceable rules about how trustees must behave, what they could do with trust assets, and what happened if they fell short. The Married Women's Property Act of 1882 gave married women the legal right to own property in their own name for the first time, removing one of the original reasons trusts had been used to protect women's assets. But rather than making trusts less relevant, it expanded their use, as women could now be trustees and beneficiaries in their own right. The Trustee Act 2000 updated things further, introduced a modern statutory duty of care and the Trust Registration Service. Introduced in 2017 and expanded in 2021, now requires most UK trusts to be registered with HMRC, bringing greater transparency to an area of law that had previously operated very quietly. So why does any of this matter to you? Because every time someone uses a trust today, they are drawing on 800 years of accumulated legal wisdom. A tool tested, challenged and refined across centuries of changing laws and changing families. Take Sarah, a widow in her 60s who has recently remarried. She wants to protect her kids' inheritance, but also make sure her new husband, David, has a home for the rest of his life. Without a trust, she faces an impossible choice. Leave everything to David, which gives her kids no guarantee, or leave it to the kids, which leaves David without a home. A life interest will trust solves it. David has the legal right to remain in the property for life, and when he passes, it goes directly to Sarah's kids, exactly as she intended. Her partner's secure, and her kids are protected. Or take James and Rachel, whose son has learning difficulties. Rather than leaving him a lump sum that could affect his means-tested benefit or simply overwhelm him, they set up a discretionary trust in their wills. And when their son needs support, the trustees are there. Care, housing, everyday needs handled by people who know him, not a system that doesn't. The arrangement Thomas, the London merchant, used to protect his daughter in 1680 is not so different from the one James and Rachel uses today. The names have changed, the paperwork is more involved, but the principle is exactly the same. The history of trust is the history of people trying to protect the ones they love from a world that does not always make that easy. What began as a tool for the wealthy and powerful has, over 800 years, become something available to anyone who wants to protect their family and their home. From a knight handing his land to a friend before riding into the unknown, to a parent making sure a vulnerable child is taken care of long after they're gone. The trust has always been about the same thing: control, protection and care. If this video has sparked some questions about how trusts actually work in practice, we have a library of videos on the channel covering the different types of trust, how they're set up and what they can and cannot do. Links are in the description below. And if you are wondering whether a trust might be right for your family, there's also a link in the description to book a free, no obligation consultation with one of our specialist advisors. If you found this useful, please like, subscribe and share it with someone who might benefit. Remember, a little planning today can make a big difference tomorrow. So, until the next time then, stay safe, stay informed and stay tuned.